All right, protecting yourself from fraud. This one has to do with identity theft. So let's get started on these notes. Starting with the first definition is what is fraud? It is an intentional effort to deceive another individual for personal gain. And this could affect you by causing you to be arrested for crimes that you have not committed. It can damage your financial security, tarnish your credit reports, and also compromise your health because of stress. So, we're going to describe the common types of fraud. Two of them are on this page. The first one, identity theft, when another personal person's information is used without their permission. And communications fraud. This occurs via any kind of communications like mass marketing, mail, wire, telephone, internet, etc., to deceitfully get money from people. Common types of fraud continued credit fraud, that is applying for and modifying credit, most commonly mortgages, home loans. And this means that someone is applying for a credit card under your name and then racking up credit card debt. Investment fraud. Investors are deceived by individuals claiming to be financial advisors or have an investment guaranteed to make money. And then finally, tax fraud. Scammers making claims that a person may be exempt from paying taxes. Anytime you hear a situation that sounds too good to be true, it probably is some type of fraud. And how can fraud affecting you negatively impact your well being? Sorry about that. It can cause stress. It can cost you money if someone racks up a bunch of credit card debt and then you are responsible for paying that or paying some of it or paying some fees related to it. It can cause you anxiety, obviously, and also time trying to get the problems taken care of. How does fraud occur? Um, by people accessing your personal information and then doing something bad with it. So, personal information is what you're supposed to be putting on the bottom of page one, different types, which would include name, address, phone number, social security number, driver's license number, birth date, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, anything that only you should be able to have access to completely. More personal information, or rather, yeah, like, so what are the people going to be able to access your and get this information from your driver's license, from your debit and credit cards, from your electronic devices like your phone or your laptop, and from any other identification cards. So anything that you have in your on your person, in your wallet, in your purse, in your backpack, whatever, people could get that, and then they would be able to find out a lot of personal information about you. Moving on to page two. How can thieves access that personal information? So, one we just talked about, stealing your purse, wallet, financial records, or even your mail. They're going to be able to get a lot of personal information from those avenues. They could divert your mail, meaning putting in a submission for a mail forward so that all your mail now goes to a different address and you didn't authorize that, but now someone else is getting all of your mail. Skimming credit and debit card information. So that could happen online, but there's such a thing called a skimmer that um, thieves, I guess we'll call them, could put in an actual credit card machine so that when you swipe it, it's actually going into the skimmer. And therefore, as you swipe your card at the store or at the gas station, that's a very common place for it to be. Someone else is now collecting your debit or credit card information. Phishing, that is involving emails that are sent to you, trying to get you to click on something, to buy something, pay somebody something, or whatever, asking for any of your personal information via email. And then also hacking your computer, installing spyware to kind of watch what you're doing, look for your passwords, look for other personal information. Oops. So, a quick note, protecting yourself from fraud is easier when you are part of a community because we have, as part of our community, some government agencies that are going to protect you from fraud in general, protect the general population and consumers. But you're also responsible for yourself. And the best way to avoid fraud is to be alert to the risk and protect yourself. And how can you protect yourself? How can you protect that personal information? There's a few examples here on this slide. Don't carry your social security card with you. That's probably the most personal identification number that you need to keep safe. You should memorize it because you will use it for lots and lots of purposes in your life, but you should not carry it with you. Sign your credit and debit cards on that back where it says a signature strip. You can sign it and say, please say see ID. And whenever you give that to a cashier, assuming you ever give it to a cashier, they will see that and they will ask for your ID to make sure that you are the same person who's on the credit card. Memorize and use difficult PIN numbers. So instead of having a PIN number that is your year of birth or your month and date of birth or something like that, come up with something different that someone could not guess about you. You want to shred any personal documents before throwing them away. If you have access to a shredder or can access a shredder somewhere, um, that would be ideal so that none of your personal information would be available in your easily, at least in your trash. Keep all your personal records in a secure location, like in a safe or in a safe deposit box at a bank, um, even if they're in your home rather than in your car or something like that. It would be a little bit harder for someone to locate or in a locked file cabinet. Deposit outgoing mail in a secure post office collection box. So instead of putting an outgoing letter, especially a bill or a credit card application, something that's got a little bit more of your personal information on it, instead of putting that in your mailbox and sticking the flag up, you could actually drop it into the post office box to make sure that nobody accesses that before it gets to its destination. And then just be careful what personal information is posted on the internet. You don't want to be posting your date of birth, your mother's maiden name, even your last name in some cases, maybe too personal, and the city you live in or anything like that. That people could access all the little pieces of information that you have out there online, put it all together in a nice little package and actually find you. That's what you don't want. So make sure that you are only putting necessary information out there for the world to see. Um, you do want to check your credit reports and monitor your financial information so that you can see if any fraud might have happened. You can immediately dispute any errors. If something pops up that you are questioning, make sure that you take care of that pretty quickly so that it doesn't turn into a bigger problem. You can verify any sources that are requesting information. If you get an email from someone claiming to be your bank and they're asking for any personal information, that's probably not your bank. And you want to call your bank maybe and ask if they still need that information. Or even if someone calls you and says that they're your bank and they just need to verify something like, the last four digits of your social security number or something like that, or your address, how do you know that it's the bank that's calling you? So a better idea is to take down the phone number and maybe either Google that phone number to make sure it's a legit place or just call, look up the actual phone number to this location that says they're calling you and call them back. And then you can make sure that they are who they say they are. And anything like credit card statements, bank statements, you want to monitor and just make sure that there's no fraudulent charges. Being careful when using the internet. So, some ways that you can do that, you can look for the HTTPS at the beginning of the web address, and the S stands for secure. It's also going to have a little picture of a lock next to it, and that means that there are extra precautions taken on that website to ensure that your information is safe. Never 100%, but it is better than using a website that does not have the S or the little lock on it. You could Search for your name and just see what information pops up, what is out there already that other people like stalkers and weirdos can access, or thieves. And if they can find it, if you can find it, then you know they can find it as well. And you want to maybe revise some of your accounts to not share so much personal information. You want to keep your usernames and passwords safe. Using a password manager like Google or like on my Apple iPhone, it saves my passwords. That's always a good idea because it allows you to have complex passwords but not have to remember them. But those are not foolproof, of course. It's better probably than just using a very simple password for everything just so that you can remember it. Remember that once you post information online, it can't be taken back. So even if you update the information on the page, old pages are discoverable. And just make sure that you think about that before you post information online. Using a credit card when making online purchases can save you as well, help you be careful online so that if some fraudulent activity happens, you're not going to be liable for the expenses. And make sure that you are looking closely at your privacy settings on all social network sites, that you are not sharing any very personal information with the general population, like location specifically, or even the city that you live in. Think like a stalker, like a crazy person, and what could they do with the information that you see out there, and then revise it accordingly. Another thing is to practice electronic device safety. So make sure that you have antivirus, anti-spyware software installed and that you're using it, that you're keeping it updated. Don't click on any links in pop-up ads or any suspicious emails. That's a big no-no right there. And watch for any strange actions. Anything strange that you don't normally see could indicate that there's spyware on your computer, and you want to maybe run a check and download some anti-spyware software. All right, moving on to page 3. Why is it recommended to use a credit card instead of a debit card when making online purchases? Here's a little bit more specifics about that. Your maximum liability for any fraudulent charges on a credit card is $50. Maybe it was your fault, maybe it wasn't your fault, but if you didn't spend that money, no matter how much it is, maximum amount that you could be out of pocket would be $50. Whereas if you use a debit card, it's going to depend on how quickly you report the card lost or the fraudulent charge, or your bank's actual policies on whether they will make you pay for those charges or not. So it could be equivalent, but just to make sure, if you have access to both, I would suggest using a credit card online. Um, Signs of fraud. No, did we skip that? I guess we'll get to that next slide. Companies this is about fraud protection services. So what are they called? LifeLock. LifeLock is one of those that you see advertised all the time that says that they are going to protect you against identity theft. So stuff like that. They're going to monitor your your electronic devices and your account, your credit report, and all kinds of things that are personal to you. They're going to monitor it and recover the cost if any fraud occurs. And if fraud occurs, they may provide legal counsel for you, so court costs. So that is great, but you are your best advocate. You're the one on your devices all the time. You're going to be the one who can check your credit card bill and your bank statement and see what's going on at any time. And obviously, you care most about it. So make sure that you are checking and being vigilant. If fraud happens to you, um, no, that's not what I meant to say. This is talking about what are the signs? So, how can you maybe be suspicious that some type of fraud has occurred? A business that has taken your money won't return your calls. You hear about this happening with like construction companies or something where you pay them a bunch of money and then they just stop showing up to work. So, something like that. Anytime you have paid somebody and then they not only have not done the job, but they're also not answering the phone when you call them, that could be a big sign. If you see any unfamiliar or unrecognizable charges on your accounts, if you were denied credit and aren't sure why, that could be an indication that fraud has happened and it's affecting your credit report and you didn't know about it. If you're missing mail, if you're expecting some statements or some bills or whatever, or you're just not getting any mail, that could be a sign. Or if there's any errors in your credit report. Something's happened and you're like, that's not right, but maybe it did really happen by somebody stealing your identity and then running your name through the dirt. If you're a victim, what steps should you take? You want to act immediately. You want to keep detailed records of anything that you do, anything that you see has happened, anybody you talk to about it, and make sure that you are just keeping as many details written down as possible so that you can help yourself get through it faster. File a report with law enforcement and report to the appropriate federal agency, which we will talk about in the next couple of slides. The most common government protection agency, there are two slides here, but you're only listing four of them. And if it were me, I would choose which one has the least amount of words and put it in the small box and put the bigger words in the larger box. So you could just say FTC in the small box and say that they prevent business practices. You could put the definition in the large box. But the Federal Trade Commission is going to prevent any business practices that are anti competitive, deceptive, or unfair to consumers. So their whole purpose is to watch how people are doing business and look for things that are any of these things anti competitive, deceptive, or unfair. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau makes markets for consumer financial products and services work for Americans. Federal Drug Administration, you've probably heard of that. The FDA, they protect the public health. They review new drugs on the market and make sure that they're actually safe for people to use. And uh, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, they regulate interstate and international communication. So anything that happens on TV, on radio, etc., the FCC is involved to make sure that nothing bad is going on, I guess, in general. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission are going to protect investors and maintain fair, orderly, and efficient financial markets. So they're just making sure that nobody's taking advantage of the general population within investments in the stock market. Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, they enforce tax laws to make sure people are paying the right taxes and not getting away with things that they shouldn't and not stealing someone else's identity in order to receive their tax benefits. And finally, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, protects the United States and its citizens in general with lots of things. So that is it for today.